When someone experiences a broken heart, most people tend to cope in their own ways. Some might isolate themselves, while others find ways to distract from the pain. However, there are those who go to extreme lengths, driven by their anguish and anger, leading to actions that can have devastating consequences. In today's story, we're diving into a case that shocked the entire nation of Vietnam. A tale where love turned into a dark, vengeful obsession. This is the harrowing story of the Bình Phước family massacre. On the morning of July 7th, 2015, the Bình Phước family's maid arrived at the villa, ready to start her day. But right away, she noticed something odd. The back door was locked, but the front door was slightly open. When she stepped inside, she was met with a horrifying scene. The entire family had been brutally murdered. Shocked and terrified, she screamed for help, and soon, the police arrived. News of the massacre spread like wildfire, leaving the entire community, as well as those close to the victims, in shock and grief. The police quickly determined that the murders had taken place in the early hours of that morning, between 3 and 4 a.m. With immense pressure from both the community and the government, they worked tirelessly to solve the case. For 3 days, investigators combed through the crime scene, gathering evidence, while pathologists conducted autopsies on the victims. The whole nation anxiously waited for answers. The police had gathered enough evidence to identify the suspects, and it turned out that the killers were much closer than anyone had realized. The investigation pointed to Nguyen Hai Duong and Vu Van Tien as the culprits. Forensic evidence played a huge role. Fingerprints, blood stains, and other physical clues found at the scene helped the police pinpoint who had been there during the murders. Duong, who was the ex-boyfriend of one of the victims, Le Tien Lin, quickly became a person of interest. His behavior at the victim's funeral, where he was overly emotional, seemed suspicious to the investigators. As the investigation progressed, more connections between Duong and the crime were uncovered. Witness testimonies and phone records further solidified the case against him. The maid, who discovered the bodies, along with other people close to the family, provided crucial information that helped the police piece together the timeline and dynamics of the crime. On the same day they identified the suspects, the special task force moved quickly to arrest Duong and Tien. They found Vu Van Tien hiding in Ny Binh commune and Nguyen Hai Duong in Bình Phước. The authorities swiftly issued orders to detain both men for 4 months while they investigated the charges of murder and robbery. Initially, Duong was uncooperative, refusing to talk until his lawyer was present. But the evidence against him was undeniable, and eventually, both he and Tien confessed to their crimes. A month later, the investigation revealed that another individual, Chen Ding Thuy, was also involved. Messages found on one of the victim's cell phone linked him to the crime, leading to his arrest. Although Thuy cooperated with the investigation, his involvement showed that the plot was more complex than initially thought. As the nation tried to make sense of the massacre, people delved into interviews and reports to understand what could have driven Duong and his accomplices to commit such a horrifying act. This case left everyone asking the same question: what exactly happened in that house in Bình Phước? To get to the bottom of this, it's important to start with the man behind it all, the mastermind of this chilling crime. Nguyen Hai Duong was born in 1991 in An Giang province. Those who knew him growing up described him as a kind and gentle person. After completing high school in 2010, he left his hometown to pursue higher education in Hocmon District, Ho Chi Minh City. He enrolled in Binh Duong Industrial College, but didn't stay long, dropping out after a year to work as a wood processing laborer in the city. In October 2013, Duong's life took a significant turn when he met Le Tian Lin through the social networking app Zalo. What started as a casual online encounter quickly blossomed into a romantic relationship. The two seemed deeply connected, and as their relationship grew more serious, An Lin decided to introduce Duong to her family in April 2014. However, this is where things began to unravel. Lin's family was wealthy and well established in Vietnam. Le Van My, the head of the family, was a successful businessman who owned a large wood processing company. He lived with his wife, their 2 children, and his niece in a spacious villa in Chuan Thang District, Binh Phuoc Province. The family was well known in their community for their prosperity and status. Initially, An Lin's parents approved of their daughter's relationship with Duong. Duong was thrilled and made efforts to maintain a good relationship with her family. Unfortunately, good things don't always last. At some point, the warmth from An Lin's parents began to fade. The reasons remain unclear, but her parents were reportedly against her relationship with Duong, primarily due to differences in their socioeconomic backgrounds. In many traditional and conservative societies, including Vietnam, families often prefer their children to marry someone from a similar socioeconomic background. This preference can stem from concerns about maintaining social status, financial security, and even future prospects for their children. Lin's family likely saw Duong as unsuitable for their daughter, not only because of his lower economic status, but perhaps also due to doubts about his future potential. Perhaps sensing that Duong wouldn't end the relationship on his own, they encouraged their daughter to break up with him and start seeing someone new. Whether out of a sense of duty to her parents or because she had genuinely moved on, An Lin agreed. She ended her relationship with Duong and soon began dating someone else. This breakup set off a chain of events that led to one of the most horrifying crimes in Vietnam's recent history. The news of the breakup shattered Duong's heart into a million pieces. He was devastated and couldn't fathom how the woman he had loved so deeply for almost 2 years could leave him for someone else. His sadness quickly turned into something darker. Jealousy and hatred began to take root in his mind, and these emotions soon grew into a dangerous obsession. In his sick mind, if he couldn't have An Lin, no one else should. Even though their relationship had ended, Duong maintained contact with An Lin's 14-year-old cousin, Du Min V. V, being a young teenager with a passion for online gaming and a need for money, was easily manipulated by Duong. Duong allegedly convinced V to spy on his own family under the pretense that it was all part of a plan to stage a fake robbery targeting the patriarch, Mr. Le Van My. To sweeten the deal, Duong promised to pay V for his help. As a young and impressionable teenager, V agreed, unaware of the deadly consequences his actions would eventually have. It's hard to grasp how a teenager could be swayed to betray his family for money, but this was the beginning of something truly horrific. Duong didn't stop there. He tried to recruit more people to assist in his twisted plan. His first choice was a friend named Chun Ding Thuai. Duong promised Thuai a share of the family's assets if he helped him. Thuai agreed, and on July 4th, they both went to An Lin's family home to set the plan into motion. However, when the moment came, V, who was supposed to open the gate for them, got cold feet. He decided he didn't want to be part of the plan anymore, leaving Duong frustrated and upset with the young boy. The next day, Thuai backed out as well, saying that he needed to care for his sick grandmother. This setback led Duong to turn to another friend, Vu Van Tien, to replace Tui. On the afternoon of July 6, Duong met with Tien over coffee and invited him to participate in robbing the wealthy family in Bình Phước Chontang area. Tien, who was in desperate need of money, agreed without hesitation. Duong laid out the entire plan to Tien, explaining every detail and revealing the tools he had prepared for the crime. To execute his plan, Duong meticulously gathered an array of tools, including a pellet gun, an electric gun, a switchblade, gloves, zip ties, batons, and pepper spray. He stored these items at a relative's boarding house in Hoc Mon, biding his time until the right moment arrived. Despite the initial hesitation, Duong managed to convince V once more to open the gate for them when the time came. Tragically, V's agreement to help would lead to fatal consequences. In the early hours of July 7th, around 1 in the morning, Duong and Tien arrived at An Lin's home. True to his word, V quietly opened the gate for them, believing that this was just going to be a mock robbery. But the moment V let them in, Duong and Tien grabbed him and strangled him until he lost consciousness. Without hesitation, Duong then stabbed V multiple times, killing him on the spot. This brutal act was driven by Duong's anger towards V for almost backing out of the plan days earlier. The poor boy didn't even have time to react, as everything happened in a flash. After murdering V, Duong and Tien made their way to the second floor of the house, where they found An Lin and her 18-year-old cousin, who were both bewildered by the intruders. Without mercy, the men taped the girl's mouth shut and tied them to a window. An Lin reportedly pleaded with Duong to stop, but her cries fell on deaf ears. Duong was too consumed by his need for revenge to turn back. Next, the men moved downstairs, where they found An Lin's parents and their 15-year-old son. They bound and gagged the 3 family members before demanding to know where the valuables were kept. In a desperate attempt to save their lives, An Lin's parents led them to the family safe. However, when they opened it, there was no money or valuables inside. Frustrated, Duong and Tien ransacked the room, eventually finding more than 4 million Vietnamese dong and some US dollars. But getting the money didn't satisfy Duong's thirst for vengeance. After taking what they could, Duong and Tien brutally slashed and stabbed An Lin's parents and their son, leaving all 3 of them dead. The violence was staggering, and the level of brutality left the nation in shock. Duong, after committing the brutal murders downstairs, returned to the second floor, where An Lin and her cousin Nhu were still tied up. He demanded to know where the family's assets were hidden, but Nhu, terrified, told him she didn't know. This answer only fueled Duong's anger. Right there, in front of An Lin, he coldly murdered Nhu. After killing Nhu, Duong sat down in front of the now sobbing An Lin. He started talking to her about his heartbreak, how devastated he was when she left him. It was as if he needed her to understand his pain before he could go any further. Once he had vented his emotions, he picked up his knife and ended An Lin's life as well. In the middle of all the horror that unfolded, An Lin's 22-month-old baby sister Na started crying. Even though Duong had just committed these horrific murders, he suddenly stopped and gently soothed the baby back to sleep. It's such an eerie and chilling contrast to what had just happened. Afterward, Duong and Tien went through the house, grabbing anything valuable they could find, like phones and iPads, worth about 50 million Vietnamese dong, and then took off. Tien headed to Hoc Mon, while Duong stayed in Chontang, thinking he could keep a low profile. He even had the audacity to hang around the crime scene, pretending to be a heartbroken ex-boyfriend, hoping no one would suspect him. But the police had too much evidence pointing in his direction, and they quickly caught on. Once Duong confessed, the police took him and Tien back to the villa on August 11th to reenact the crime. The whole reenactment took about 5 hours, and everything matched up with what the police had already figured out. By November 4th, the authorities officially charged Duong, Tien, and Thuy with murder and robbery, crimes that could lead to the death penalty under Vietnamese laws. They also had Duong and Tien undergo psychological evaluations, which confirmed they were fully aware of what they were doing and could be held responsible for their actions. On December 17, 2015, the Binh Phuoc People's Court held a first instance trial in Chanh Thang District. It was a huge event, with hundreds of police officers deployed to keep things secure and orderly. The court ultimately concluded that Nguyen Hai Duong was the mastermind behind this horrific crime. He was the one who planned everything, leading the charge. Vu Van Tien was right there with him, helping carry out the brutal murders. Even though Thuy didn't physically participate in the killings, he was still found guilty because he provided the tools that made it all possible. When the trial wrapped up, Duong and Tien both received the death penalty. They tried to appeal, hoping for a different outcome, but their appeals were quickly denied. Thuy, on the other hand, was sentenced to 13 years in prison for murder and an additional 3 years for robbery, even though he wasn't directly involved in the act itself. It was clear that his role in supplying the resources was considered crucial. Duong seemed to accept his fate quietly, but Tien was visibly shaken, even breaking down in tears when his sentence was read. On November 17, 2017, Nguyen Hai Duong was moved from Binh Phuoc Prison to Binh Duong Province, where he was executed by a lethal injection. Vu Van Tien met the same fate a year later, also executed by lethal injection in 2018. These executions were incredibly hard on their families, especially Tien's. Before he was executed, Duong apologized to Tien's family, expressing deep regret for dragging their son into this terrible situation. But Tien's family, heartbroken and overwhelmed, could only respond with silence. People still struggle to make sense of it, often wondering what could drive someone to commit such a horrific act. The loss of innocent lives, especially with a little baby caught in the middle of it all, is something that continues to haunt many. As we remember the victims, we hope they've found peace, and we send strength to those close to the victims. And for the rest of us, let's hold our loved ones a little closer and stay safe. Thanks for watching.